Welcome, Karen. I want to let you know how much it means to me and the Center for Character and Social Responsibility that you are sharing your time with us to talk about the role of caring, character, and commitment as a leader during times of crisis. These past few years have been filled with myriad challenges, including a pandemic, major political changes, conflicts throughout the world, responding to climate change, and increasing emphasis on the importance of getting equitable access to high quality learning for all, even as the definition of equity and high quality learning are changing. You have been a leader of a PK-12 institution during this time, and we're very interested in learning how caring, character, and commitment to students, faculty, and parents have influenced your leadership decisions throughout the last year and in your current work coaching leaders. To get going, would you please introduce yourself and your current work and the educational institution of which you were a leader for 18 years?
Sure. My name is Karen Bohlin. I have been the head of the Montrose School in Medfield, Massachusetts for the last 18 years, but I've had a 30-year career in education, higher education, secondary schools, with a primary focus on helping leaders really tap into all of their potential to lead not only in a crisis, but to tap into that capacity to navigate the ordinary and the stresses so that they can create formative institutions.
Mm-hmm. What do you appreciate about your work, and what were some of the unique challenges you have faced in your tenure?
I think first of all, there's no work that's more noble than really shaping a community. And there's many parallels, right? Family, any youth serving organization, leading a school is really it's a privilege and it's an honor. And so when I think about all of the challenges I've faced throughout my career in the schools world, that's just one application of my work. I think about how important it is to bring together the adults so that they can create and shape a culture in which young people can thrive. And so adults face a number of different challenges and certainly have in the last 2 years that have affected their families, their economic situation, the challenges of how they do school, teaching and learning. Administering a school in this environment has been enormously challenging, and we need to take care of the folks on the front lines so that they can stay not only agile, but committed to those very deep reasons that drew them into education in the first place, which is caring, character, and commitment to changing the lives of young people for the better.
Thank you. So a little more explicitly, how does care and being care play into your decision making, and where do you think that is challenged?
Yeah, I think that it's challenged. Caring is challenged when leaders and all leaders, but particularly educational leaders at this moment in time, are challenged by various demands. You know, they can be economic demands, bureaucratic demands, compliance demands, safety, testing, standardized testing. And so it's that myriad and complexity of expectations externally, internally. It's that very careful leadership and management required of a complex organization. You've got the students, teachers, parents, caregivers, all of whom you have to sort of conduct in some harmonious whole. So if a leader loses sight of his or her North Star, it's very easy to become depleted, overwrought, or just put out fires instead of really illuminating a pathway for everyone in the school community to move forward.
Great, thank you. And again, when you think about character, what does that mean to you, and how do you see it playing a role in your decision making as a school leader?
Sure. I mean, character is about who we are. Character is we want to develop in ourselves those habits and dispositions that don't just help us achieve certain performance goals, but help us to become a certain kind of person. I mean, and we all know from, who we admire most might be our grandmother because of her unfailing selflessness and generosity. It might be Atticus Finch. It, might be a dear friend or mentor. It's people who treated us certain ways. It's people whose fairness and justice, and above all, kindness and love, whose incredible professional competence is always paired with caring and commitment. These are the people we admire most. So it's developing those habits of mind, heart, and character that are really at the heart of sustainable life change. What are those habits that we all agree on that help young people to flourish? And so when we think about character, we think about kindness, respect, fair-mindedness, integrity, courage, and as a leader of a school community, we want to be thinking about all the time, how is it that every decision we make is formative, is helping the adults model, coach, and teach these habits of courage, of kindness, of fairness? How is it that every program we develop is advancing a way, it's creating the conditions and the context in which young people can learn to develop these habits and really thrive as individuals and collectively as a community. So leaders are really building cultures conducive to these habits. So they're being very mindful that they're not just focused on following policy, being compliant, following the expectations of order and safety. Those are fundamental. Those are sort of baseline, but they're creating an environment that's really conducive to this deep personal and intellectual growth that's transformative. That's what it means to be committed to character. Keeping that a priority in every decision.
So this is maybe another way to get at this question too. But in PK-12 education, we think of three major constituents: the students, their parents, and their teachers. They each have different needs, and those needs can sometimes exist in tension with each other. In your work, how do you manage to balance your commitment to each of these groups?
Right. Well, my work is with leaders. So how do you help the leaders, whether it's people on the administrative management team, teachers, work in such a way that every decision we make is serving the students? And so creating a mindset, and what's so central to my work right now is this practical wisdom framework, creating a mindset where all of the adults and the leaders are constantly asking the question every time you have a conflict, whether it's with a parent and a teacher or with a student and another student. We want to model an approach to decision making, conflict resolution, courageous dialogue that helps us press pause and ask the critical question: what are we looking at and why? In how do we bring everyone, all of these constituents together around a common aim? How do we problem solve and make decisions in a way that honors the agency of all the stakeholders? So their voice is heard, they feel honored and respected, and we give time and attention. We put them in a place where they can have some ownership and some participation that's meaningful and fitting. And finally, it's really important that the leaders are very adept at understanding the context of each student's situation, the context of the teacher's situation, the context of the parent's situation. So to develop that sensitivity to context, to develop that practice, that habit of pressing pause and saying, what are we aiming at? And asking those good questions, to develop that capacity to honor the agency of everyone involved. We need a compass. We need that ready compass at hand, because we're going to be challenged. Sometimes we're going to be putting out fires. We're going to be under stress and pressure. And so what's important is this mental model that we can teach everyone to press pause and reflect. Ask these questions, we assess the context, we engage everybody in conversation. That might take more than one conversation, more than one meeting. It may require some recalibration, stepping away, giving people time to think. And then we're in a position to make wise prudential judgments. It's when we skip the steps and we just react in the moment, or we give into political pressures, or we don't bring the right parties to the table, that we make those decisions that kind of are short term and not formative. And that doesn't mean we're human beings and we're works in progress and we're going to make bad decisions. But still, if we can consult this compass, this practical wisdom framework, and reflect even on a bad decision, again, bring people together. What is our aim? What do we know about this situation? What do we need to know? Who can help? Really understand that context and those individuals, and then honor the agency, honor their first reactions, understand the heat of the moment, and afford yourself the time and the space to deliberate well. So that's what's so important to me, both as a school leader at Montrose. My team did this beautifully. We would apply this compass, and now I'm applying it with leaders much more broadly, because the challenge for us is to know what to do and we don't know what to do. The challenge for us is not just to respond idiosyncratically or shoot from the hip based on what we've done in similar situations. The challenge is to establish, to tap into that compass that's going to help us make wise prudential decisions, and to have that mental model at hand, so we can kind of cut through some of that stress and pressure and politics, and be at peace with how we've made a decision.
Karen, one of the things that I find very moving in what you shared is not only does it sound like you want to center the personhood, the being of your faculty, of the students, of the parents is centered to the conversation, that they need to be held and cared for in the structure of the institution, but also some forgiveness of our own frailties, to kind of recognize that we're not always perfect and that we're going to make mistakes, and it's how we remain engaged in our own humanity, as in addition to that of our colleagues and our students, that's where the real work is. It takes effort and work, but centering that personhood is key to moving forward. Did I hear that correctly?
Absolutely. I think that this, when we tap into this compass and we really reflect, recalibrate, respond, we're doing it because we're honoring the dignity of every in the school community and our own dignity. We're doing it because we know we're works in progress and we need to sort of revisit and begin. And we're doing it because we have this very high and noble aim, which is to honor each member of our school community and our own journey in life, and anyone who leads a formative institution, particularly a school environment, is putting themselves out there, is putting themselves out there. They are giving above and beyond in an environment that's compressed and unrelenting, and you accompany educators and parents and children at times in their life where they experience great loss, where they experience great moments and small moments of change and growth that need to be celebrated and honored. But we really are walking with them at the most formative times in their lives. And we can't be superhuman. We do need to have that healthy self-compassion. And that's why we also need to build shared leadership practices.
Mm,
And again, it's so important to have that, mental model in hand. And this is where the practical wisdom framework has been so well received
mm-hmm,
by educators, because we can all lean in, press pause, and have these questions to help ground us. What are we aiming at and
mm-hmm.
why?
Yeah,
Whether we're making a decision about a program, masks, no masks, safety, or we're responding to a particular crisis.
yeah,
And feelings are hot and sensitive, and we need to really make space for meaningful conversation.
great. Thank you. So over the past several years, particularly with regard to the variety of crises educators have faced, can you give us an example of how putting caring, character, and/or commitment to others first as a leader had a positive impact on your institution or your other work in coaching other leaders?
Sure. I think that when I think back to all of the challenges we faced in this pandemic, from the suddenness of quarantine to all of our students and families being separate and experiencing uh, George Floyd's devastating death,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
and then having to prepare to come back to school. There's so many sensitive mental health issues, so many strains and stresses on the adults. So it's been really, really important. You said it beautifully before, that the leaders in the school came together to discuss, how do we hold our school community? What do people need first as human beings, so that we can begin to think about teaching and learning? How do we
mm-hmm,
respond to this particular crisis in a way that first allows us to honor everyone's initial reactions, sort of an emotional place? How do we provide the space for that conversation, even if it's mediated by Zoom? Because so many big and explosive things and challenging things have happened, that we've made it, and I've made it. My practice and the practical wisdom framework helps to do that, to say, let's always start with honoring first reactions. How are you
mm-hmm.
doing? What do you need? And just to make space for that conversation
Yeah.
before we talk about the next agenda item. How are we
Mm-hmm,
going to adapt to
mm-hmm,
school? When you do that, the faculty at Montrose School were so incredibly grateful for the time and space for conversation, so incredibly grateful for the intergenerational support and learning how to adapt to technology, so
mm-hmm,
incredibly grateful for the surveys and the conversations about what small changes would make the biggest difference right now. Doing that human pre-work takes a little bit of extra time up front, but then all of the implementation, the intellectual work of teaching and learning, the using technology, the developing new programs so that students can have courageous dialogue, um, all of that work can go so much more smoothly, and you
mm-hmm,
have buy-in and engagement because those human conversations were prioritized up front. And again, that's just part of what is so important in the leadership coaching and work I do now. We have to acknowledge and honor first reactions to whatever the conflict, the challenge is, make space for that before we can move into productive reflection, study, and really engage in that hard next step work and
mm-hmm.
implementation. And I think that when people try to affect change before inviting your inviting everybody to speak about what concerns them the most, you end up going backwards and starting over at some point.
Yeah. That's true at work and in our families too. That's a great model. But can you give me an example of a time when putting character, caring, and a commitment to others first did not work out the way you thought it would?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't think of I certainly, certainly had a variety of responses when we did put um, caring and character first. Uh, for example, just writing a letter to our parents and students and school community um, uh, right after uh, George Floyd was killed. And a lot of people were enormously grateful. The school community was enormously grateful. And the students had an initiative, a prayer service, a meeting, a community Juneteenth event. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of phenomenal growth. And then there are people outside, further out in the school community. You're not talking enough about the police. You're not talking enough about this. You're not talking. All of a sudden, there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of explosion and critique of how we started acknowledging, grieving
Yep.
not only this loss, but several lives lost, and what we
Mm-hmm.
needed to look at, and how we were going to have this conversation with our students. And I was met with some pretty serious reaction from people who are not currently in our school community. So the pastoral response, if you will, to our current students and parents was very well received
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
as well. But there's always critics of schools and school communities from the outside who want to label what you're doing. And of course, they don't have full context
Yep.
and
Yep.
don't understand your role, and they're not there. So you've always got a jury outside. Um, I think too, in my many years in education, I think we've always responded to those tragedies, that happen. You lose someone in your school community, and that's always been well received
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, by students and families. But you'll always have someone a little worried,
Yep.
that you just got to get back and focus on school.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It'd be interesting. The other leaders who are going to be sharing their thoughts with us in this conversation. One is doing similar work in the context of being an international school in Beijing, where they had the whole larger political context, which is very involved in the school, thinking how to care for their kids and what they need now, and how to be respectful for those demands. And the other is a public school leader who has all those other kind of the community sometimes needs interfere with the ability to focus on children. So the fact that you kind of emphasize and lift up the need of your proximate community first and the challenges that creates is a
right.
very important message for us all. So, but before we let you go, as you think about how you have integrated caring, character, and commitment into your leadership style while managing crises over the year, what advice would you give your younger self as she was entering this field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I probably would tell my younger self to remember that there's no growth and comfort, and no comfort and growth. And all of these challenges you meet with are not challenges you as an individual have to solve and have all the right answers to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But to stay agile and step away from the wall and enlist that team of folks. And the wisest responses can be made when you stay calm and you
mm-hmm,
work together.
mm-hmm,
And that, you know, the problems is not a mistake. Mistakes are not problems. They're opportunities to then reflect
mm-hmm,
and be humble and communicate next steps. They're huge opportunities to build trust um, and unity as a school community.
mm-hmm.
So I think I would have told my younger self to take some of the heat off maybe she'd have fewer gray hairs, but as a result. But sometimes you can't, um, yeah, you can't know at the time. You're just
Mhm.
so hard.
Yeah. Well, Karen, we want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and we so deeply respect the work that you've done, both at Montrose and throughout the educational community and your leadership. And we appreciate your affiliation with the center greatly, and as it helps us find better ways to help leaders take their role in a caring, thoughtful manner. So we really appreciate the work you're doing and the time you spent. So once again, thank you for your time, and look forward to more work together.
Great. Thank you, Hardin. It's good to
Okay,
be here.
you
Appreciate it.
take care.